Good evening, everyone, and welcome, excuse me, to the regular April meeting of the Blaine County School District Number 61 Board of Trustees. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Trustee Burks.
Present.
Trustee Stone. Present. Trustee Romero.
Present.
Trustee Rourke.
Present.
And Trustee Turner.
All right, let's move then. There is a quorum. Consequently, I'll call a meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance as usual.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So that you've all received a copy of the agenda. Are there any comments or amendments proposed? All right, seeing none, then I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. Next is the consideration of the minutes. Again, are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the minutes.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries, and the minutes are approved. The next item is the consideration of monthly financial reports, payments of bills. Apparently, Val bought a round trip ticket to Hawaii for the Wizard of Chocolate Gulch. Could move things along tonight. Does anyone else have comments or questions?
The only question,
Yes, go ahead.
the only questions that I have are more related to what the legislators been doing, what the impact that might have on the budget. So maybe that's, we can talk about that in the budget section instead. I didn't have any questions about the report. They all look great.
Yes, please.
I did want to just give everybody a brief update on the Finance Committee review and recommendation.
Please.
After the last board meeting, we talked very briefly about the banking crisis. And so Trustee Turner and myself have spent a lot of time this past month reviewing our banks, how our money is kept safe. And I thought you might want an update on that, if that would be okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so the way our banking works is kind of at the center of it all is what we call the LGIP. That is the bank that's with the state of Idaho. That's where our money is held with the state of Idaho. And that is where our foundation payments are deposited into. It's where all Idaho state government banking happens. Okay, they invest in government-backed investments. And so it's a very safe environment to have the money in. From the LGIP, then we have direct lines to D.L. Evans Bank, which is where we pay our payroll out of, and Mountain West Bank, which is that's where our general, when you approve the bills, they're being paid out of Mountain West Bank. Mountain West Bank is a very conservative bank. Well, actually both D.L. Evans and Mountain West are very conservative. Mountain West, they focus on government-backed investments, U.S. Treasury, things like that. And so, you know, we feel pretty good about having our money there. Along with that bank at Mountain West, it holds a sweep account. So every night it sweeps out the balance of what's in the account. And they actually have an FDIC approved sweep account. And what it does is it takes that balance and it disperses it out at $250,000 to other banks that are, it's basically like a consortium of banks Like they're depositing back into Mountain West Bank, Mountain West Bank is depositing into them. And it's this transfer of money that happens, but it keeps our money,
Insurance.
yeah, insured by the federal government.
Yep.
So we haven't agreed upon amount. I think we decided, no more than 5 million in that account. So, we all felt like that was it was safe. That was a good alternative. So in addition to that, we agreed that we wanted to take our reserve fund, which is about 16 million, and we want to invest that in like US Treasury bonds ourselves. So Trustee Rourke, Superintendent Bowdy, and myself will be the 3 people that are on that investment pool. And I will work with, it's Mercer Advisors is who we're going through. It will have kind of a direct link to our checking account. So if we want more invested, we can invest more. If we need to cash it out, it will cash out into our Mountain West Bank account.
And they'll
So-
have a ladder of treasuries in there, different terms that
Yes.
come due at different times.
Yeah. And so they're going to help us set that up and have kind of a rotating investment pool going on there. And like I said, that's where we would like to keep our reserves. I did a pretty extensive analysis and I feel like we can function very well and not dip into our reserves. December is the month that we come the closest, but then our tax payment comes in January. And so I think it will be a really good way to diversify our funds and not have them all sitting in one place. And so that is what we reviewed with the Finance Committee, and that is what they're recommending we do. And so, do you have any questions?
I do, if I could. One of Dan's concerns, Trustee Turner, was that most accounts are insured only to the level of $250,000. And part of his concern was finding a way to increase the security of our funds. Are they in accounts, or can they put in accounts where if one of the banks did in fact fail, we'd be insured?
So Mountain West Bank, they belong to, it's called an IntraFi. I brought it with me. They can insure the money that we have in there because they're sweeping the account out to as many banks as we need at $250,000 deposit.
I see.
And then it kind of goes back and forth. All those banks are vetted. They have to have, they have to meet criteria that makes them fairly safe.
And then the treasuries, you don't have to worry about insurance on because it's backed by the government.
Right.
Owning treasuries outright is different.
And the LGIP, it is not federally insured, but it's our government banking system, the Idaho state of Idaho banks there. And so it's only backed by US, what US Treasury backs. And so it's fairly the risk level is very low there.
Right, thank you. Other questions?
No, I think that
Trustee
sounds-
Perks, do you have any questions? All right,
Sorry,
then.
looking for my mute. No, I don't. Sorry about that.
Right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the financial reports as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Those reports are approved. Next matter is a consideration of personnel exiting, entering, and alternative authorizations. Turning to our HR director. Candy, you want to elaborate on what we have in writing?
Yeah,
Please
absolutely.
do.
So we do not have any alternative authorizations on the request this month. I would love to open up if you have any questions on this request, and then I will give you an update on some of the vacancies that we have right now that we're trying to fill.
That's what I was gonna ask about, was just what that looks like, how many positions you're trying to fill.
Absolutely. So at Alturas, right now, we have a bilingual on the Spanish side vacancy in kinder, and we're also hoping to fill a first grade. At Bellevue, we have an elementary teacher position at the second grade level and ENL. Haley, we are trying to fill a music position. Wood River High School, we have math right now, and then district-wide, we're still looking for speech language pathologist and trying to fill a school psych position.
Was that position, the speech therapist, was that filled last year, or we're going into the second year?
We had a staff member out on a leave of absence, and we never filled that
I
position.
see. Other questions? Yes, trustee Stone.
So we have a grow your own program, and we've expanded that a bit. Can you just give us, do you have an idea off the top of your head, how many people, like what's our upstream?
So
Looking
since
like
the
it's
last
worth-
board meeting, we've had 2 of our staff reach out for the social work program.
Great, so 2 more people than we had last month. Okay. That's great.
Any other questions? Treasurer Blackburn. All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the personnel exiting, entering, and alternative authorization report.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. The report is approved. Now we move to the action agenda. The first item is the Wood River High School boiler. And our building and grounds superintendent is here. Floor is yours, Sean.
Chairman Ward, members of the board, thank you for your time this evening. As part of the 23 to 27 plant facility levy, one of the projects was to replace the domestic hot water boiler and the 4 heat boilers for Wood River High School. They're the original boilers for the school, constructed in 2003. The project was estimated at $267,000 in initial pricing for the boilers. We knew we were going to be fairly close to that projected cost. So we set the project up to do a bid alternate to install the domestic hot water boiler, 3 out of the 4 heat boilers, and then the bid alternate will be the installation of that 4th boiler. The new proposed boilers are 95% efficient at 2 million BTUs. The existing boilers are only 80% efficient at the same 2 million BTUs. Total capacity would be fairly close with our 3 projected boilers at 95% efficiency. The pre-bid meeting was held on March 23rd. There were 4 contractors that were at the pre-bid meeting. Only one submitted a qualifying bid, that being Evans Plumbing. The bid for the project came in at $453,000, which is substantially over the $267,000. And the bid alternate to install the 4th boiler is an additional $93,000. We still choose to go that route. This last winter, it's been one of our coldest winters, and we were running off of 2 of our existing boilers for a period of about 6 weeks because of parts, trouble procuring parts to make those repairs. I'm confident that with the 3 boilers, we would have the capacity to heat the building as well as have backup and redundancy in case one of the boilers were to fail. It is up to the discretion of the board to either reject all bids and try and go out for a bid again. If we do that, the project will not be able to occur this summer. To accept the bid for Evans, or to accept the bid and the bid alternate for the 4th boiler. We'll go ahead and stand for questions at this time if the board has.
Questions? Yes, trustee Stone.
Why do you think it came in so much more expensive than what the bid was? Is that just a reflection of construction costs going up in materials?
Quite a bit of it was a reflection of construction costs. The entire budget for the project, like I said, was 267. Just our initial pricing, if we were to buy the boilers with no market, was going to be right around 190,000. So that doesn't leave a tremendous amount for markup or install. So 453,000, although higher than the projected budgeted amount, is a feasible.
It's basically what it costs to get it done.
Other questions? All right, then I will entertain a motion that we approve the contract as explained.
I move we approve the bid from Evans College.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, then, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. That request is approved. Thank you, Mr. Pena. Next item is the Blaine County School District surplus printers. Authorization to sell those.
Board members, thank you. So the school district, we're migrating to a centralized printing model at this time. The district had 376 printers dispersed around the district for a while, and we're moving into a spot where we're gonna have around 80 printers or so, 80 managed printers around the district. It'll improve efficiency. It'll offer us the opportunity to have reporting, and the maintenance of them will also be part of the built-in setup that we're putting in this model. And so what I'm looking for is, through this paperwork, is all the printers that are surplus, all the ones that are the really old ones sitting on a teacher's desk, to be able to just recycle all of them and get rid of them. We'd like them all to go away.
Recycle, you mean trash?
Well, so we have a recycling mechanism we have in our department, and also there are some staff that want to maybe take them home. As long as they find a place either ecologically or someone can reuse them, I'm comfortable with either.
And what is the estimated cost of the 80 new printers?
So through the management program that we have, the cost is kind of built into the leasing program that we're getting into. And we're going to save a significant sum of money per month in printing costs and management costs going forward.
Excellent.
You said $6,000 a month.
$7 minimum.
7,000 minimum a month for
Minimum,
saving
every month.
the new printers. It's amazing.
Any questions of our IT director? All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the request to declare the printers surplus.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. The request is approved. Thank you for being with us. The next item is the approval of the social studies curriculum. Adam, I guess I can turn that over to you.
Yeah, so this came as information in the previous month. We went through the adoption process and we have proposed the list of recommended social studies materials for adoption. There is one title under 6th grade. We have TCI Alive, the Ancient World. I want to clarify that that's Geography Alive is the full name of that title. It's misprinted in the board packet, but the list is the same as what we reviewed.
Any questions of our assistant superintendent? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Excuse me. Ayes have it. Motion carries. And, we have approved the social studies curriculum. Final item on the action agenda is the approval of the superintendent's contract. I circulated a rough draft just about 3 weeks ago. Laura has looked at that, as has Trustee Turner. And I think we have a contract now that is in a position where we can discuss it. And I believe Trustee Stone, you had some comments that you wanted to make.
Yeah, I did.
Let me just ask first, did all of the trustees have an opportunity to look at the email from Trustee Turner?
Yes.
All right.
So the first thing that I wanted to bring up was about the 401A. The contract as proposed on the agenda proposes a $15,000 contribution to it, but we're switching from a percentage contribution for all administrators to a flat dollar amount of $7,500. And the way the program works, whatever you do for one administrator, you have to do for everyone. So since we're switching to $7,500 flat, that would also pertain to Mr. Fowler. to the
And
amount
so that
contributed
particular
would be-
provision you would amend in what way?
I would amend to say that he will get the same contribution as the other administrators.
All right, I think the contribution, the idea behind that larger contribution was to make up for the fact that our superintendent was good enough not to ask for that particular program when we hired him, which
He has not
was
been,
certainly something no superintendent's ever done before.
I know, he hasn't had the opportunity to participate the last 2 years, actually.
Right,
But because of the way the program is and that the contribution is, it'll be part of this next plan, he'll have to be part of the flat rate. of the plan, because he'll be joining it.
I know this is all pretty uncomfortable, but are you okay with that change?
I'm fine.
Any other comments or questions?
The only other question that I had and Dan had raised also was, we're talking about changing how we do Percy, and we've been making a contribution to all of our staff where we've been paying part of their required Percy. And we're talking in negotiations, it's when, yeah, do you want to explain?
Trustee Stone and members of the board, if whatever action is taken regarding Percy for all staff should apply to the superintendent as well.
Okay, so the language can just say that it'll
Correct.
apply across. the board. Great.
Any other questions or comments? Then with those two changes, do we have any additional changes? And you are comfortable, Superintendent Fowler, with us? All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the contract as essentially amended by the comments from Trustee Stone.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. That contract is approved. Are you in a position to make those changes or do you want me?
I can make this.
Okay, very good. All right, then we move to the information agenda, and the first item thereon is the superintendent's report.
And so, thank you, Chairman Rourke. I'll be brief this evening. Thank you for the extension of the contract. We have a lot of work to do, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Excellent. So happy you accept.
Just agree to increase your salary, and that's all you have to say.
I hope it's a thing. Thank you.
Oh, we're paying by the word. That's quite a raise. All right, then. As far as the chair report is concerned, and I see a number of people with us today, and thank you for being here. I assume that all of you have probably provided us with your written comments, and we understand the request. We have always operated under a procedure in which we have plenty of time to review any request for additional personnel. And as a matter of fact, given the negotiations that we had with the BCEA last year, we are now in the process of right-sizing our faculty, our staff, and we are actually reducing positions. So we are not going to adopt that suggestion this budget year, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to take it under consideration. These are the kinds of things that we want to go to each of the building district leadership teams, and they can take input from the teachers. We also want our district leadership team to have an opportunity to comment. Where we stand right now is that when we create a new position, we're essentially at a place where we have to eliminate a position. And that becomes a very delicate, very sensitive situation. We don't really know exactly what the budget is going to look like this year. We did have some additional funding that was authorized by the state legislature. How that's going to play into what we have is as yet unknown. So I don't want anybody leaving here thinking that we have rejected the request outright. We certainly have not, but we will be asking building principals, their leadership teams, and our district leadership team for input so that we can make a final decision. I might also point out that the board and the superintendent have an understanding of how we divide the decision-making authority. And we try very hard to stay within our own lanes. The request came into essentially to the board of trustees, and I fully understand that. But we would not be in a position to approve that and in effect tell the district leadership and the building principals and their leadership teams, this is a program that you have to take on. We want to know what their feelings are, how it might be improved, and we'd want to know where it fits in with what we're already doing. I know that there was a proposed job description. I read it a couple of times. From reading the comments, there's a fairly wide diversion of opinions as to what these liaison positions would be doing with the ed piece that appeared a week ago. Dr. Hatzenbuehler and Ms. Lopez made comments about this as a position that addresses a need outside the classroom. And that's a matter of some concern because we do not ordinarily engage in those kinds of situations. Perfectly willing to do so here, but we have to know what would happen under these circumstances. Among other things, our teachers and other staff work 9 months out of the year, basically, and they have regular hours. As I read some of the comments, it appeared to me that we would be expecting the liaisons to work other hours. And there are some services that are talked about that we feel may already be covered. So again, I don't want it to look like we're rejecting the request. We're not. But we're not in a position this late in the game. In fact, we have our preliminary look at the budget tonight. And we just aren't in a position within a week to do the kind of evaluation that is responsible for the Board of Trustees. So I understand and thank you for your comments. And I hope you'll continue to lobby for the position and work with our administrators in terms of trying to find exactly what we're talking about. And then the board will be in a much better position to make a decision on that request. So that's the chair's report for tonight. Who is taking up the hazard mitigation plan?
Chris Gorham. And I don't see Mr. Gorham.
Apparently, this is going to be a very short report.
I sent them an invite on his calendar so he would remember.
Thank you for coming.
So Chairman Org, I perhaps table that item. Mr. Gorham's not present.
Sure. Please do.
Go to my next one.
All right, we'll move on then to the newcomer center at the community campus. And I believe that's a topic that you can guide us through. So we just,
I'm gonna defer to Director Walker and Principal Draft.
please come forward. And,
You can pull a chair up.
I'd like to have you up close where we can cross-examine.
Of course. So what we're requesting is the use of 2 classrooms here at the community campus for our newcomers, giving them their own space. I think we gave you some information, giving them their own space, being flexible in scheduling. When students come in, they would have a place to go versus sitting in non-class periods, things like that. and looking at it basically like a very intense intervention.
And the program is aimed at helping the English learners.
Yes.
Those are the newcomers of whom
Yes.
you speak.
Mhm.
Mr. Graff, you? Yes, please do.
Facilitate a couple questions. So one, talk about the scope of the program, the grades that are impacted, and also the question arose, how does a person exit? Is it access
Okay, yeah.
testing?
We said testing in the tries. So every try we would test to see where they are. Can they return back to the campus, or do they need to stay within the program?
What grades?
What grades?
So if you don't mind, I want to give you a little bit of background of what Inspire is, because it resolves some of the issues we faced that Inspire is.
Yes.
So this year we had, as you guys, we've heard, the influx of new students, which has been wonderful to have them, but they've come to us with more interested in education. And at the high school, we've had about 30, 9, 12. We had a 19-year-old come to us today. And they have all sorts of needs. And so right now, in the confines of the high school, we have 5 periods, and we have to plug these kids into the periods. My newcomer teacher, I pulled her from co-teaching. She now teaches all newcomers what they want, just because the needs are so great. So one of the things she teaches is language acquisition. We went from 1 course, first try, to 2 courses over try 2 and try 3. We pulled her for co-teaching math. She does have a math credential, but she has a class of math first grade through pre-algebra in one setting, and the class period to address the needs. She has an EL tutorial where she does a lot of literacy development, reading, to help those students. What we have found with the struggle, because we have students, we average probably 1.5 students per week since January. They have just come in, and they come in with 2-3 weeks left in the trimester. So they're coming in. We don't want to say, no, you can't come to school until the trimester, especially if they're homeless. That's just not the right thing to do. So we're either plugging them into my newcomer teacher's classes most of the day, but she has to have a prep period as well. And so we're plugging them in where we can, and sometimes they're sitting there, we're trying to find meaningful work for them. And so magic wand moment, we need a space and a time period that can flex with the need. We don't want to be bound by a bell schedule. We want kids to be able to come in and plug into the group most meaningful to them. And that was more challenging in a high school setting with the bell schedule being what it is. The newcomer center can then flex to the need. There is speculation that has come up over and over with the changes in the laws of immigration happening in May, that there's another round of students coming. We just don't know. So we wanted a center that can flex to the need, whether it's next year or 2 years or 3 years, we just don't know what that need is. So if it's less, it can be less. If it's more, we can expand more and not be bound by the confines of that building. When she talks about space, we have 1 EL classroom right now because we do use the co-teaching model. It's one of our smaller classrooms. It is packed at lunch. And it's packed at lunch by not only our newcomer students, but also those who have exited the program, because that's been their home base. That's where they feel safe. And so by having a newcomer center here, newcomers have a space. And then over there, that will continue to be a space for our exited students that are still needing monitor status.
Yeah, and that was one thing that when we interviewed some past students that are, attending college now, one thing that they said that they would have liked to have is kind of their own space, so they were able to feel comfortable and kind of adapt and learn their way into society in a meaningful way, and not just feel like just kind of plugged in somewhere. So,
Trustee Stone.
This sounds a lot like the request we've had for the liaison position, except it's an entire department and area to handle it, rather than one person floating around the building. It's different because you're actually providing
This is instruction based.
Instruction,
only.
this is
Yes,
instruction based.
Yes, yes. So, there would be intensive. like,
Which is what we do.
Newcomers curriculum, right, for that social language learning, and then the English and the math.
Yeah.
So it's all instruction based.
Yes, Superintendent Farrell.
And with the current numbers of students, this does not require any additional.
Right.
We're shifting staff from Woodbury High School physically to.
Yes, we're not asking for any funds. We're just asking for space.
No, but you will. You'll be.
If we get a whole bunch of students, we might.
How many students is this program geared to serve in a given trimester? Let's say?
Well, right now, we're looking at 30, 32.
Yeah, and I don't know quite how to answer that question because we're here to meet the needs of whatever comes our way. Sometimes it's less than 10. Sometimes where we're at now, it's more than 30. We have 30 newcomers, but there's more kids who need services in addition to just newcomers.
And
So
what
it's-
we're talking about here would apply to 9th through the 12th grade.
Correct.
But there is no parallel or similar program at the middle school.
Oh, there is. So we did this a couple of years ago. We had a newcomer center. It was housed at the middle school and then those students were bused up. It had its challenges to have high schoolers sitting in the middle school was probably not the most comfortable because of the age discrepancy. And the numbers were much smaller. Now, and our needs are just different than you see at other schools because we have a very limited amount of time to get them to the finish line.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I
Right.
have 4 years or until they're 21 to get them to the finish line and we have.
So the teacher who, or teachers who are going to be involved in this program, did they previously have responsibilities that were not directly related to the newcomer program?
They were co-teachers,
Okay,
so they were working with the ELD students, but their role changed this year because of the newcomers.
so that doesn't leave a hole in your opinion as far as you can tell that it does.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, full disclosure, we have 120 students that they case manage. Case management looks different for an EL teacher than an IEP, a special ed teacher. So I use that term carefully, but they have to case manage. These are kids with needs that go into an instructional classroom because of language, limited English needs. That's why the co-teaching program, which we have seen to be effective, I am pulling from that to address this need. I am also pulling one of my A&L teachers, Ernesto Ramirez, has played the liaison role as part of his role because that has been a need. We're finding families are coming in, they're very much want to be part of their students' education, but there's a lot of education they need about the American system. There's a lot of education they need around the resources that are available to help their students. And there's a lot of times where we're pulling Ernesto if there's a discipline issue or if there's a mental health issue or whatever the issue is, we have a face-to-face person in there talking with families at that time. So Ernesto gets pulled a lot in what I would dub as the liaison role. I have not seen the job description, but I know what it is in our building. And that's been pulled from co-teaching as well.
Trustee Stone, do you have a question?
Yeah, and so what would you say the impact is of pulling co-teaching? Does that make it harder for the students who maybe aren't in the program anymore?
Well, it makes
Would
harder,
it
you're not co-teaching, you're not able to instill the growth, you're not able to hit those targets as much. And so, yeah, you're spread much thinner, so you're not gonna deliver as well.
So we have 120 kids, like I said, and 30 newcomers. So that gives you an idea of the rest of the kids, so to speak, the 90 not necessarily getting everything they need. We're doing the best we can. My teachers are phenomenal.
Yeah.
But they've gotten really creative and I'm super proud of what they've put together in this kind of build a plane as we fly it here, because this was so unexpected, a lot of what we've gotten. And so this is a way that we can kind of help meet the needs.
And, you know, the goal is not for these students to stay in this, that we want them to transition back as quickly as possible so that they're not, you know, missing and they're able to, you know, to
They don't percolate in this
adapt,
program
yeah.
forever.
Yeah,
That's
adapt
not
into
what we
the classroom setting more so. It gives them the tools to be able to be successful, which is what we want to see.
Trustee Burks.
Hi, guys. Thank you for this way to adjust your sails. This just sounds incredible. A couple of questions. One is just making sure I understand the whole picture. So is this essentially like a year program that you put you'll use this room and then like you said, kind of they'll phase back out, or will it be more trimester based, or kind of all of the above?
Yeah, a little bit of both. As students come in, they're going to come into these rooms, but as they test out, they'll phase back out into the school setting. So a little bit of back and forth.
Okay. And then, so just kind of adding on to, I think, Trustee Stone had asked kind of towards life skills. Are there any life skills, I guess, like in the middle of this, these classes? It sounds like they're pretty packed, but is there an opportunity for that at all or not?
Yeah, that's what the newcomer curriculum is. It's your essential, like speaking language, your learning your environment type of language. So that first piece, the intensive language piece, is more of that, not your learning, conjugations and English and things like that. So it's more of that social
Applicable English.
Yeah.
And who makes the judgment as to who's going to be in this program?
So when a student registers, they take an access test. That is our screening test that gives a language proficient or a language fluency level. Most of our newcomers are at a 1. It's a scale of 1 to 6. Scale of 1 to 6. Research shows language acquisition to get to the academic level at least takes at least 7 years. So we're not anticipating that they're going to hit a 6 and leave the program. They get to, it's around a 2 or 3. And I don't have those numbers exactly in front of me, but we assess it along the way. An example of the math, Devin started a math class out of desperation because we had kids all over the map on their math skills. And her elementary background came into play, and she did stations using some of the software that we have as a district. Imagine Math is one of them. We now have a group of those kids going into Algebra 1 because they were ready. And we used that math data to determine, are they ready for the next level? And they're moving in. So our goal is to try to get them through, fill whatever holes and put them into the high school level curriculum to try to get them to a diploma. Sometimes we just run out of time. So that is going to be something that we're anticipating is we're going to do everything we can to get them. But so the life skills question, Amber, to you, one of the things we're looking at, I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking, but our ELP plans is really creating meaningful plans, looking at a kid's reality when they come in. What are the odds that they can, in the time that we have, get through the 54 credits required for graduation? Or what can they, have they transferred in from their foreign school? And we make a plan, and then we develop a plan through their ELP process. We're trying to update the plan. If it's life skills or vocational training, if that's what prepares them best for post-secondary and that's the track they want, great. Let's do whatever we can while they're at the high school to prepare. If they're college bound, okay, great. Whatever we can do to prepare them, but it's really going to be customized to the student as they come in and just the reality that they come in.
As you probably know, we've gone all in on the PLC approach. And I assume that when students are going through the program that you're outlining, they of course will be outside the normal PLC approach for that grade or those classes. And then they will return as soon as it's determined that they're capable of doing so. Other questions? Yes, Trustee Romero.
Yes, thank you. With you mentioning that Ernesto has been helping out quite a bit as a liaison, with him leaving at the end of the year, how do you anticipate to help fill that gap to get the word out to parents about their students being in a separate school?
Well, I'm very happy to report we've hired for that position with an individual who can fill those shoes.
Oh, wonderful.
Bilingual,
Yeah, well, great.
Cultural stuff.
And does that position have a specific job description, or is it?
The position that was posted and hired for is the ENL teacher, which is the co-teaching position, and then other duties as assigned.
Okay,
Where we swing the other things in there.
but it is, there is some kind of definition as to what that individual is responsible for.
An ENL teacher?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, trustee Stone.
Of the 30 that would be in the program of the newcomers, how many of those are native Spanish speakers?
Oh, I think we have. In my Google Hangout, I have the whole breakdown. We have half Vietnamese. Yeah, it's maybe 2 or 3.
Who are not native Spanish? Okay. Okay, and of the 120 altogether, again, mostly Spanish.
Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Very small.
Other questions?
I have one
Yes,
additional
you
question, sorry.
first.
And so you guys are asking for 2 classrooms, is that right?
Correct.
Just due to like hoping to split the kids up kind of thing, or doing, like switching them?
They would rotate, one would be, yeah, they would have the newcomers curriculum, and then they would switch for reading and math.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Are
Yes,
are
trustee
those empty
Stone.
classrooms right now, or are they being used for something else? Has something else have to shift out in order to make room for?
I think they're going to be empty.
It's to be determined, but it's most likely 2 of the spaces that were previously occupied by CSI.
Any other questions? All right, this is on the information agenda. I'm not sure that we have to take any action, but if we do, we'll do that on the action agenda at our next meeting. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great creative problem solving.
Ready to go back to the hazard mitigation? All right, then let's do the preliminary budget review for fiscal year 23.
Well, I can tell you what I know, which isn't a whole lot just yet. I am going to the legislative roadshow, which is on Thursday. I'm going to an earlier one. I'm going to the one in Boise. So I can get more information, be able to work on budget stuff over the weekend. But we have other folks in the district that will be going to the legislative roadshow in Twin Falls, so they'll be getting the information as well. But just a few highlights as far as the revenues go. What the legislators have done is they have voted to put an additional $6,359 on each rung of the career ladder. So that, I want to be really careful in how I say this, because that is not per teacher, per certified teacher. It's for how we're funded through salary apportionment. And so it will generate about an additional $1.1 million for teaching staff. So we will take that amount and we will divide it out. And as you know, we have over the number of staff than what we get funded for. Right now, we currently have about 104.5 teachers over what we're funded for, which it had been up to 120, and so it has come down. So I'd like to point that out. And we've already.
Can I stop you for just a moment, Val, so I understand what we're saying here? So we would take the total of the money that is allocated on that per teacher, qualified teacher basis. And then we would divide it by the full number of teaching staff.
Yes,
So each of the individual teachers would have available significantly less than the 6,000, something like that.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's, preliminary numbers look like it's about half of that. We have talked to BCEA about this, And so we've gotten their ideas on how we can possibly disperse that. And so we'll continue to talk with them and work with them. And then negotiations will help as well. And so we do have that additional, I'm just letting you know, we have that additional money to work with. In addition to that,
Can I interrupt? really quick?
yes.
Is that a one-year thing? Or is that, with that, we expect that to be an ongoing?
It's an odd way, that they presented it. And so from the business manager side, we are somewhat cautious about it because they called it out and they didn't just put it in the career ladder. I know the talk is, and maybe we'll learn more through the legislative roadshow, but they're saying the legislatures want to see teacher salaries across the state increase. They're not saying they have to increase by that amount. So we're thinking that's why they've separated that out for this next year, but we've been assured that it is part of the funding formula. So I'm kind of anxious to hear a little bit more about what the plan is with that, and then we can model so that we can report back whatever it is that they're looking for.
It's a big difference if they're committing to that going forward or if it's a one-time thing.
It is a big difference. And
Yeah.
so we're trying to respect all angles of that. And
Learn more.
hopefully we'll learn more about it.
Okay.
So that's where that is. In addition, the legislators are committing to a 4% increase in classified funding and 4% in administration funding. Just to give you an idea, on non-certified staff, we are funded for 62.4, but we have 110.7. And so it's not going to be a 4% increase. Again, it will be an increase. It will be passed through, but we have to figure out what that looks like. Administration, we get funded for 12.5 and we have 14. So we're just barely over what we're funded for. So those are the things that I do know that I'm working on numbers with. And then our support units, which that's our discretionary funds and our health insurance. So our support unit amount is going up by $6,067. So our support unit was $35,924. It is now $41,991. And that's about a 15% increase, I believe. So that is giving us an additional close to $1 million in funding if our support units remained where they were, how we budgeted for last year, which last year we budgeted on ADA and not enrollment. So that was intentional last year. So that will help.
Could you explain the support unit purpose again?
The support units are what gives us our discretionary funding. And it's based, well, this coming year, the new budget will be based on ADA. So it takes your 28 best weeks of average daily attendance, which is what ADA stands for. And they run it through a formula and they determine how many support units you get based on your enrollment.
So basically, they're just doing a 5 to 10% haircut depending on your attendance. Right? They're basically just paying you on fewer kids than you actually have in school.
Yeah. Awesome. And so increasing the funding to it, but decreasing. Yeah.
Right. So that's one that take with one hand and give with the other.
But that's why I was saying we budgeted on ADA last year. And so going forward with this year, that should still be
Like an
close
increase
to
for
$1
us.
million increase to us.
Good
So, yeah, that will help with increasing cost of transportation and, some of those other increasing costs that we don't have control over. So it was good to see that. So I don't have much more that I can address.
There was, and I kind of lost track of the bill, but there was at one time a proposal to provide some funding for increased security measures. Was that bill actually funded? Do we know?
I don't know.
Uh,
I do believe it was.
It was?
I believe there is a kind of a grant application program districts can apply for through the Office of School Safety with some additional funding.
And do we know yet what the grant application process is all about?
I think they'll cover it at the roadshow this coming week.
Well, as you know, Trustee Perks and I have been looking at an increased SRO. And it strikes me that if we could get a grant to help fund that, it'd certainly be a step forward. Do we have somebody who will follow up on that? I think Peggy's going to take a look at it, but my idea is to get there and get our share of the money before anybody even knows it's there.
We have numerous people attending the roadshow. And we'll
Okay,
keep
good.
lookout.
Other questions? Yes, Trustee Stone.
One of the bills that passed was about open enrollment. We've had a closed district. And my initial thought was, oh, this is great. We'll get more kids. We'll get more funding from the state, forgetting that only a third of our funding comes from the state and the other money is just a fixed amount. So in the end, that ends up costing us more for those students and it's kind of less money per student to go around. How do we think about that?
Trustee Stone, if I may, it depends upon who the kids are and where they enroll.
Okay.
And so my recommendation would be that we develop a policy before August that it outlines like the enrollment process in the school district, so that we have some discretion on placing students where we have space.
And if we have space, then that helps.
Correct.
And if we don't have space or we have to add, yeah, right.
Then if it triggers the addition of staff, then it's problematic. But if it doesn't trigger the addition of staff,
It helps.
it helps.
Okay, great. It was a clear.
Other questions?
I'll make sure that's on the list.
I understand that the board is able to set an attendance limit at each of its buildings. Is that correct? And I suppose that, for instance, for elementary school students, we have space at least. I don't know if we have the faculty. We have space, for instance, at Bellevue, but we certainly don't at all terms.
Correct.
So shouldn't we be scurrying to set those limits wherever we can? My concern is many years back, when the policy, I guess you'd call it an exclusionary policy, was adopted, that was triggered by the fact that so many people who live in Jerome and Twin Falls and Lincoln County come up here every single day.
Yes.
And so it becomes obviously very easy for them to bring the child, drop the child off, they go to work and then come back and pick up the child. And I don't know that that's going to happen again, but it was at one point, it was a significant problem. So I think we're going to have to stay right on top of that or we'll find ourselves wishing we had. Any other questions? All right. Oh, yes,
Just real
Trustee
quickly.
Stone.
Is that a pretty straightforward process to figure out what the enrollment would be at each school?
Yet,
Kind of how many-
Trustee Stone, so we already have policy on class sizes.
Yeah.
So my opinion would be to use the policy on class sizes
With current staffing?
and current staffing. And when we're reaching those thresholds, provide opportunities at other schools that are below the threshold.
Yes, Trustee Romero.
Thank you. I know that we, for the last year, a couple years or so, or even before my time, we've been trying to cut back on how much staff we have because of that, because we have so many. So do we have yet an idea of where we might be landing for this year or for this upcoming year? Like
In terms of staff.
in trimming, yeah, staff positions.
Yeah, the proposal, I think we have demonstrates a reduction of 2 FTE.
This year is
We-
2.
We were trying to get to 7. So we're obviously, we're still trying to find ways to reduce staff. It's not easy.
Mhm.
I know that the board's interest was to get to 7. We were able to reduce by 2. So. And if we're fortunate to have an increase in enrollment due to this new law, and that enrollment arrives at schools that have capacity, then we don't need to reduce as many staff.
Well, wouldn't it,
Because we
without
generate-
Alturas out of the calculation, in this valley at least, and I'm not dealing with Cary, we've got Bellevue and we have Haley and then
Hemingway's full.
And Hemingway is certainly full. But let's say that a parent wanted, out of county, wanted to place their child in, say, Hemingway. We would be in a position under that new statute to say, yes, we can handle them at Bellevue, but we cannot at Hemingway or Alturas.
Yeah, Chairman Rourke, I believe so.
Okay,
You, to that point, you could say carry is your option.
good. All right, other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Just a comment on the amount of staff that trustee Romero brought up. It's so much more than just classroom sizes. And so one of the things that we need to start looking at is programs. And you've got to have, like, we are a very rich, program-rich district. And so that's where, we wouldn't just cut teachers because of classroom sizes. It's so much bigger than that. And so having some time to really evaluate program issues, it's more global. And so then we would want to evaluate and decide, are we continuing with X, Y, Z?
And to that point, during the 23-24 school year, we're planning to develop our strategic plan for 24 through 29, at which point we would be coming up with priorities, which would then give us a lens to consider which programs have higher priority than others.
And we'll get lots of feedback from the
Yes.
community on all
Right,
that. So we'll have a
right.
really good sense of what programs have that support and the interest and all that. That's great. Good timing for it.
Yes.
Every program has its lobby.
Yep.
All right, any other questions, Patricia? Thank you very much. Next item is the Ernest Hemingway STEAM School course request.
So we have 2 course requests for next year. One is a graphic novel writing elective course. The impetus for this was basically we've been offering 3 classes of virtual reality because there was just such high demand when we first offered it. Now, a lot of our 7th and 8th graders have taken it. They don't necessarily want to take it again. And so we were looking for a class with high interest that would attract some of those students. So one of our English language arts teachers came up with this idea. A lot of students have a lot of interest in graphic novels. So they will produce a graphic novel by the end of the class. The focus will really be on the writing process and reading portions of graphic novels and talking about what makes them special and what makes them different, and then actually producing their own. And they will do the artwork as well, although that will be sort of a secondary. She's an English language arts teacher, so the focus will be on the writing.
So if this program is approved and adopted, will the virtual reality program stay in place?
They'll keep 2 sections of it.
Instead of
So
3.
we currently have 2 teachers who teach it 1 trimester, and second trimester that one of those two teachers teaches it again. We just, the first year we offered it, I think we only offered it one trimester, and it was just inundated and everybody was upset that they couldn't all get in. So basically tripled it, and it's been full, but it's waning now. And now we have, 7th and 8th graders who've almost all taken it. So they just don't necessarily, they actually are allowed in our the way we run our electives to read, it's not the exact same curriculum every single year, so they can take it again. But especially that class is very much about creating their own projects, so they can retake it, but a lot of them have just taken it once and they are ready to move on. We don't have quite the same level of interest. But they will still have two different trimesters, they'll have the choice.
Instead of 3.
Yes.
Other questions? All right.
Okay, the other is a STEAM application culminating class that will be it will only be offered for 8th graders in the 3rd trimester. Mr. Quater and Mr. Parsons are going to partner. Mr. Quater will be generally responsible for the content and the teaching, and Mr. Parsons will be the second teacher helping to administer, because it'll be our entire 8th grade class. So between the two of them, the idea of this is that it will sort of be a culminating activity for all of our 8th graders after 2.5 years of STEAM learning, that they'll have an opportunity to have a sort of a capstone course. So in this class, the idea is that it's not exactly just an iteration of the art and engineering that they've been doing, but more all-encompassing. Mr. Quater intends to work with the other teachers to help the students integrate some of that's the whole idea behind STEAM, right? Is integrating the subject areas. So creating projects that integrate multiple subject areas into a project that they're interested in. Everybody's project will be different. It won't be one big, everybody's building a wind turbine. It'll be based on the students' interests and then hopefully really a lot of fun.
Sounds like it will be.
Yeah. One Mr. Quater's amazing.
Any questions? Go ahead, Trustee Stone.
That can't count for the high school senior project thing that they have to do, can it?
No.
It's too early.
No, and Mr. Quater is very aware of trying to not, step on toes in terms of making, you wouldn't want kids to get to high school and be like, well, I already did this, why am I?
Sounds like they'll be well prepared to do the one in high school, which would be excellent.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Why not have that one be round 2 when you actually know what you're doing? Great.
Hope so.
Other questions or comments? All right, then. Thank you. And this will be taken up on the action agenda at our next meeting.
Perfect.
All right, the advisory committees, letters of interest. Assistant Superintendent Johnson, are you taking that or are you?
I guess I can do it. It says.
Oh, go right ahead.
You want to do it? So this is the time of year that we set up in the policy to reach out and get letters of interest from people. Superintendent Patty, you send an email to all staff. That's great, because we've asked staff also to submit letters of interest. And then Vicki, has anything gone out to everybody yet? Jerry's going to work on doing constant contact communication, right, with everyone?
He is, I tried to get in there 4 times today, and it seemed like the website was having problems.
Okay.
So I'm sure.
So soon that will go out.
Yes.
Okay, great. And it's, we want them back by the 21st. It's for 4 committees this time instead of just 3, because we now have a curriculum committee as well. And when we get those, we'll go through them and hopefully appoint them at the May meeting. The term won't start until October 1st.
And I sent you guys all links to the different folders for each committee, whether your applications or letters of interest are coming in.
Great.
And then I gave you a list of all the current members.
Trustee Parks.
Do we, who of the board is going to be a part of that curriculum committee?
You were, right?
Can I be, I guess I'm asking, can I be a part of that conversation? If there's an opportunity.
Well, you put your application in with everybody.
Thanks for that, Chairman.
I've got that position right now. I might be willing to give it up.
Or even just some conversation behind it, and we can have, we can talk, so I don't have to take up, all the time.
Right.
But I would love just to give some feedback as well. So whatever
Sure.
that needs to look like.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
Please encourage people to apply.
All right, then we move to the procedure policy for district hiring practices. And the proposal was that we send that on to the policy committee.
Right.
Do we need to explain anything further?
I would just like to give a little bit of background on
Sure.
it. So we have had some issues with having a really big turnout of students for a particular sport. And we need, in order to have enough supervision, we need to have another coach. And the policy as it stands right now would be that they would have to come present that to the board. It'd be on the information committee or information agenda. Then next month it'd be on the action agenda. And by that time, the season's basically over. And so they've had to cut students and participants instead of being able to accommodate everybody. So this conversation started when we were trying to figure out how can you make sure we can get enough supervision to allow all the people who want to participate. And we've been working on the policy for maybe 9 months, talking with the athletic directors. They've been very involved. HR has been very involved. And the goals of the it's really a procedure, which doesn't necessarily have to come before the board, but because it's a change, we thought it was important to, have it aired out and have everybody see it on an agenda. The goals of it are to allow all students who turn out, who want to participate, to remove the need for the board to approve, because it's been a really inefficient way to do that, to make sure we're providing sufficient supervision for safety, and for the board to provide the superintendent with guidelines about adding and removing coaches and advisors while keeping the minimums necessary to run the programs. So we want to not only be able to add coaches if we need them, but we need to make it pretty clear when we remove coaches when we don't need them anymore, so that we don't have this kind of constantly growing list of contracts, supplemental contracts and coaching positions. And then a final piece of it is just writing into the procedure, making sure that the coach and advisor evaluations are being done every year, so that as you're deciding who to keep and who not to, as these positions shift, we've got really good data and evaluations to decide who needs to stay and who doesn't.
How do you budget for that situation?
Candy.
This will make budgeting a lot easier because this procedure will define what our minimums are to run all of these programs. So
And that's based upon so many participants per coach.
participants and just like looking at football, we didn't necessarily look at just the ratio of adults to participants. It's the nature of the sport, increased injuries, things like that, that would need more support in that program.
We've got coaches who are being injured.
Have
So
you met
there's
those
a-
high school kids?
The ratios that they are developing and have developed are basically, there's a contact sport ratio and a non-contact sport ratio.
As a baseline, and then some sports, boys and girls sports are at the same time in the same season, so they could share assistant coach, but sometimes there are 2 different seasons and maybe sharing one doesn't work for that. So there were some different things like that that were being considered.
Well, again, so understand how this operates. Let's say that you set the contact sport ratio at 1 coach for every 10 participants, but you reach a point where you've got more participants than the number, it doesn't work out evenly. So in other words, do we wait until we hit that next increment?
Yes.
And so we could be in a position where we would be outside the guidelines as such.
It's more of a range than a hard guideline.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So
because for just that reason, because you have people come in, then people get hurt, and it drops down again. There's got to be a little bit of flexibility. And they also, one of the criteria in the policy that you'll see is how much experience, say, a coach has had, what their rate, is that something, how they can manage that big a group of kids, how spread out the kids are, like cross country, where they're spread over a 3-mile stretch versus they're all in a basketball court inside. Different things like that factor in.
Trustee Ferguson.
Just a quick question. I was looking at this earlier and I was going to send an email and didn't have time, so I apologize. But why is BPA not on here? For Business Professionals of America. I know that
Club?
yeah, I guess, but I guess like I know Carrie specifically only speaking, but I know they have like 26 kids, and just kind of watching, and maybe it is because it's a club, but just kind of watching from the side, they go to like Boise and they're going to California this year. Last year they went to Texas. So I just have been trying to wrap my head around that.
I believe it's because BPA is a CTE program. They get additional funding through CTE. And so they have a different funding model.
So the teacher instructing gets additional funding through CTE?
Yes, the teacher has the opportunity to have an extended contract. They use it for supplies, they use it for travel when they go to the conferences. So it has just a completely different funding source.
Okay. And maybe Val, I'll connect with you separately, just same, so I understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll be happy to send you some information on that.
All right, thank you.
Well, we want to do everything we can to increase the number of supplemental contracts. for me to sign.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Just trying to understand, I guess, the differences, because I saw, like cheer and just other clubs or whatever. So just trying to understand. So
Understood. Trustee Stone.
And one last thing that I wanted to point out also, we've had multiple types of titles for assistant coaches, and now you're either a head coach or an assistant coach. And that'll provide more flexibility for the athletic directors and the head coaches to assign people to whatever duties they need to be assigned to, instead of someone saying, well, I'm only the defensive coach. Therefore, just kind of simplifies everything, and it's a lot easier for HR, because if people switch roles, they don't have to switch titles and job descriptions and everything else. So it should be easier on the HR side as well.
Other questions? Okay, that will wrap up that matter. Superintendent Foudy, do we still need the executive session? Okay. Then I will, entertain a motion that pursuant to Idaho Code Section 742061B, go into executive session for the purpose of considering the evaluation, dismissal, or discipline of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, individual agent, or public school student.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, this takes a roll call vote.
Trustee Kurtz,
I
trustee Stone,
Aye.
trustee Romero,
Aye.
trustee Rourke,
Aye.
and trustee Turner is not present.
So the record should reflect that all four of the trustees present voted in favor of holding the executive session.
I will move over into the executive session. See you in a minute.
We're moving along too fast. Right, do it.
We actually got to shut the door. So excited. We're gonna have a lot of policies to do going forward. A lot of tricky ones.
All right, we're live.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you would note that at 7:43, we came back into public session. We have no further matters to discuss. We have no further decisions to make, so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned.
I just want to say, yeah, let's